everyone, welcome to my first video of 2021. I know I sort of abandoned my YouTube for the last couple of months because, you know, holidays and birthdays and all that good stuff. And I didn't really want to put out content that I wasn't fully invested on just to put out content. So I just didn't. So for today's video, I am really excited because I am going to show you how I'm making these kind of homemade watercolors. I bought this stone, I don't know how to call it. I think it's a stone. I mean, it came in like a stone shape. I bought it in Dubai when I was there a couple years ago in this sort of antique market place. It's kind of like an old antique stone. I don't know what it's called in Dubai. Anyway, I bought it there in like this little shop of like spices and things, and I thought it was really interesting. I like the shape, I like the color. I didn't know what it was until I saw a post from Cindy Leinart on Instagram on how she was making her own watercolors from like stones or pigments that she bought in Japan. And I was like, oh, maybe this can work and maybe I can use it. And I did, and it was amazing. The color that comes out of this pigment, it is amazing. So I'm really excited to show you how I do that. And I am also going to, but it's very pigmented. Like every time you touch it, it just, everything it touches, it leaves pigment on. It's not permanent. You can obviously wash it off. Anyway, I also bought a few pigments in Hokkaido when I was there last March. And you can check out the art haul that I have a video of it up here. But so I bought this pigment and I am also going to give it a try. So we have two pigments. We have some distilled water. You can check out any YouTube video on how to make distilled water at home. I sort of just followed any one video. Not any particular video. Anyway, I also have gum arabic. And just to tell you straight up, I am not a professional watercolor maker. This is just a recipe that I found through Cindy Leinart. Like she says a few drops. So I was never able to figure out what a few drops is or what the ratio is. So I had to do a lot of experimentation on what the ratio was. And then also kind of a lot of research, watch some YouTube videos. Nobody really gives you a ratio because everybody has their own like secret techniques. But I am going to show you how I do it and what my ratios are for what I'm doing. So this is for like a one batch kind of approach. It's not for making full batches or anything like that. So with nothing else, we'll jump into the materials that I'm going to use, the ratios, and paint something fun. All right, so these are the materials that we're going to be using. This is the first pigment, the one that I bought at Hokkaido, and it did cost me $10, so it's somewhat of a fancy pigment, but I don't really know what it says other than it's $10. Then this is the stone that I keep talking about. It is shiny on the outside. You guys can see that I've used it before. I've done some experiments and it's just a wonderful color. Sometimes it's like a little bit shiny and it's very pigmented. It pigments everything it touches. So that is the indigo kind of material we're going to be experimenting with. Then this is the distilled water, some kind of a boiling process that I looked up on YouTube. Then the gum arabic, it is by Winsor & Newton. I bought it in Japan, but I'm sure you can find it on Amazon, 100% sure. And lastly, you're just gonna need 2 plates to put your pigments in. I just happen to have a big one and a small one. And then the mixer. So this is the one that I have. It's little, but it's enough. So this is what I'm going to use. Alright, so I am using a small spoon because I don't have measuring spoons, but say this is like a teaspoon worth of pigment. So I'm just gonna shave the stone, quote unquote stone, and try to get about a teaspoon worth. So that's what I'm gonna be doing. Alright, so now I am done kind of making a mess. I have roughly 1 teaspoon and that is going to be enough. Alright, so I'm just gonna put it on in my mixer, and roughly I know that it's about 1 teaspoon, and I don't want to waste any of my very precious material, so I'm trying to get as much out of the spoon as possible. And then I am going to add the distilled water, and I am going to add about half of my pigment ratio. And now I am going to add the gum arabic at the same ratio of the water, so about 5 or 6 drops of gum arabic. So I am doing a 1:2 ratio, so 1 part pigment and half part water and gum arabic. So I am doing that to start with, but I will add more water as I start mixing and seeing the consistency of the paint. Like this is going to be a little bit too thick, but I might add a little bit more water or a little bit more gum arabic, but I will keep showing you guys how I'm mixing or what I'm mixing. As you guys can see, like the consistency of the paint or the pigment is not flowy. It's very smooth, but it just doesn't flow. So I am going to go ahead and add more water. So at the end of the day, I think I did about 10 drops of water and 5 or 6 drops of gum arabic. So this way, like the pigment actually like was flowing a lot more, was more easy to work with. After grinding it a few more times, like a few more minutes, you can see the pigment is like really intense, and I do have kind of enough to put it in a plate. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to put it in a separate plate, and then I'm going to mix my other color. Now I'm just going to use a synthetic brush, and I'm going to taste the consistency of the paint and the intensity, the value, and I can see that it is a very saturated pigment. It is a little bit grainy, but I just couldn't grind it anymore. Like it's a very fine pigment, but regardless, it's a little bit grainy. It will eventually settle and dry, but it's still a really amazing color, and I absolutely love it. So I'm just testing kind of the intensity of the color, really. Okay, so for the second pigment, I am basically going to follow the same steps. I am going to measure roughly a teaspoon of pigment, kind of making a mess, but yeah, I'll kind of measure, kind of eyeball it, because this is really just a little spoon, and I will go through the same process of measuring some water, measuring some gum arabic, and testing the density of the pigment, and I'll show you guys how it comes out. So because I saw the consistency of the pigment was a little bit too thick, I am adding a few more drops of just the water, the distilled water. So I think, again, with the same as the last pigment, I'm basically adding 1 teaspoon of pigment, 1 teaspoon of water, and half a teaspoon of gum arabic. I use the same ratio for both, because also the consistency, the thickness of the stone of the pigment, the dry pigment, is really, really thin. So there's not a whole lot of mixing to be done. So I'll just show you how it works when I start painting with it. Okay, so I am going to start with kind of like a wet on wet approach with the second pigment that I mixed. And this is how I saw Cindy use it, Cindy Lane art. She did a wet on wet approach, and that is kind of what I'm following. So I'm grabbing the pigment that we just finished mixing, and it does settle kind of a little bit, so you have to like mix it with your brush kind of harshly. I don't know how good this is for brushes really either. So maybe I'm doing it wrong. I don't know. But I'm trying to do what Cindy did and doing a wet on wet approach first. Like you guys see, the paint doesn't particularly flow as or like explodes, you know, when you use regular watercolors. I'm not even comparing it to ink, but just regular Winsor & Newton watercolors. Like, it just doesn't flow the same, but it's still cool. Like, it's still a nice color. It's still like a good turquoise color, and it has a graininess to it that I actually like. So this gives it like a little bit more texture. So that is kind of a characteristic of these kinds of pigments. They are very like grainy. And so now I'm going to use the first pigment that we mixed, the indigo. I'm going to call indigo because it looks like indigo. And I am just going to continue painting. I am doing the same kind of wet on wet approach. And as you can see again, the pigment doesn't just like flow. I guess is chemically is a lot heavier. So I don't really know how Winsor and paints are made, but this pigment, like the actual stone, it's a heavy pigment. So it's very intense. Like the value of it is just very dark. So I really, really, really like this color, the indigo one and the turquoise too. These two, I really do think that these two colors flow together really nicely, like visually. So I'm just going to show you a little bit of a closer approach, just so you can really see the graininess of the pigments and just their pigmentation. And it's just such a beautiful color. So I'm showing you guys a closer angle, and I'm going to continue painting with these two colors, and I really hope you guys enjoy the process, and I'll leave you guys with some music for right now. Alright, so we are approaching the end of the painting, and I want to remind you guys or tell you that I am using Bettyhayway's brushes. They are synthetic, they are vegan, they hold a ton of water, and I really like these brushes. You can find a link to where you can buy them down in the description below if you like these brushes. And yeah, I really hope you guys enjoy the process of making the pigments and the little painting that I made. So I really hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys next time. Okay guys, so that is all for today's video. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys learned anything, if you liked it, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And like I said in the video, the colors do settle. I am not exactly sure why. I don't know the science behind making watercolors at home, but they work for what I need them to, which is just kind of experimenting and making pretty little things. So they are a little bit on the opaque side. They don't flow as easily as like the watercolors that you buy, you know, at the art store. But this is a little bit of an experimentation. I really liked it. I really enjoy making my own little watercolors. And I hope I can find some more pigments that I can play with. So that is all for today's video. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.